Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to structure a short comparison-contrast paragraph. So a comparison-contrast paragraph focuses on comparing similarities or differences between two or more elements. Although at first glance it seems pretty easy to write a comparison-contrast paragraph, to write an effective paragraph of this type, you must ask yourself 3 questions before you even think about making a plan and then writing the text. These questions are: what is your purpose? A comparison-contrast paragraph has many possibilities. You could just focus on the similarities between two elements, or you could focus on the differences, or you could talk about similarities and differences. Some writing theorists consider a comparison-contrast paragraph as a subtype of an opinion text. For example, you may decide to list the differences between two elements to point out that one is better than the other. So of course that would be a kind of our opinion, right? So you would be given your opinion. The second question would be, what points of comparison are you going to select? And the last one, how am I going to present these points of comparison? Now, imagine that your purpose is to highlight the similarities and differences between the problems that Latin American and Asian American immigrants face. So, you could also establish your comparison points, because these problems, they are varied, right? So you have to decide which points you want to select. So I selected 2 types of problems. The first one would be work problems and the other one would be social problems. So now you can think about your thesis. So imagine that this is my thesis. Latin American and Asian immigrants to North America face discrimination at the workplace and in society, but for different reasons. So as you can see, I have selected a thesis that focuses on the differences, right? So now that I've got my thesis, I'm going to think about my arguments. So I'm going to list them by the 2 categories that I had selected. So the first one is the workplace. So what kind of problems do they face in the workplace? So the first one would be, it's hard to get well-paid jobs for Latin Americans. And it's hard to get management positions for Asian Americans. The second category that we discussed, that we had selected before, would be social problems. So the first one would be that Latin Americans are feared for their numbers and Asian Americans are feared for their intellect. So again, those are my ideas, right? Based on my background knowledge. So of course, and also this is just an example. So please don't believe that my opinions are not as nuanced as they could possibly be. So this, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. So now that I have decided about my arguments, my purpose, my thesis, I'm going to start writing the text. So the third thing that we discussed that you have to think about before you start writing a comparison and contrast paragraph is the organization method. So the first organization method that I want to show you is what we call the whole by whole organization method. So basically I'm going to put all of my arguments that have to do with the workplace problems in one section, and all of my problems that have to do with the social problems in one section. Alright, so as you can see here, the first sentence would be my thesis. So Latin American and Asian immigrants to North America both face discrimination at the workplace and in society, but for different reasons. So now I'm going to list all of the problems that they face in the workplace. So because of stereotypical representation by the media and society at large, both communities face challenges at the workplace, but these challenges differ because the perceptions North Americans have of them are also different. So for example, Latin Americans find it hard to accede to well-paid jobs because they are perceived as poor, uneducated, and untrustworthy, whereas Asian Americans do get well-paid positions but find it hard to get higher management management positions because they are perceived as too shy, too passive, and bad leaders. So as you can see, I have put all of my arguments having to do with the workplace in one big section. So now I'm going to talk about the social problems. So in addition, these communities face great problems being socially accepted because North Americans fear them for different reasons. So because Latin American families are perceived as very large, North Americans fear that Latin Americans will end up dominating the culture because of higher population numbers. As for Asian Americans, because they are perceived as intellectually superior, North Americans fear that they will dominate their higher education institutions and end up taking away the highest paying jobs from the ethnic majority. So that would be an example of whole by whole organization. The other organization method that I'd like to show you is called point by point. So as you can see here, I have highlighted the different types of argument in different colors so that you can see the difference from the other type of organization method. So again, we have the first sentence, which would be the topic sentence, our thesis, right? So Latin American and Asian immigrants to North America both face discrimination at the workplace and in society, but for different reasons. And right afterwards, I'm going to start listing, but first one element from the workplace category that we had selected before, and right afterwards one social problem, but for the same community, the Latin Americans. So as you can see, at the workplace, Latin Americans find it hard to accede to well-paid jobs because they are perceived as poor, uneducated, and untrustworthy. And right afterwards, I am going to list the social problem that Latin American families face. So in addition, because Latin American families are perceived as very large, North Americans fear that Latin Americans will end up dominating the culture because of higher population numbers. Then after that, I'm going to start talking about the Asian Americans. But as you can see, I am going to again start with the workplace issue and afterwards move on to the social issue. So as for Asian Americans, they do get well-paid jobs but find it hard to get higher management positions because they're perceived as too shy, too passive, and bad leaders. Moreover, because Asians are perceived as intellectually superior, North Americans fear that they will dominate their higher education institutions and end up taking away the highest paying jobs from the ethnic majority. So, as you can see, this is a little bit different from the other organization method that I showed you. Now, to recap, so whenever you are writing a comparison contrast paragraph, the first thing that you have to remember is that your purpose must be clear. Are you comparing, are you contrasting, or are you doing both? And your purpose must appear at the beginning of the paragraph. After that, you have to decide what comparison points you will use, and you have to stick to them. And finally, you have to decide what's the best organization method for you. What's the organization method that you're going to use depending on the type of elements that you are comparing. So, if you have liked this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. I am planning on uploading a video at least once a month or more often depending on how much free time I have. So bye for now, and thanks for watching.